Hey everybody, it's Adam DeClerico back with you today on Friday and rounding off the week with our interview series. Just a cool thing that we get to do at Next Generation Soccer Academy. We've got somebody that I know from Chicago who is an incredible ambassador of the sport and was a player and just super involved even to this day. Tony Sanneh. Hey Tony, how you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for always being open to supporting, all things that include soccer. We're so thankful for having you join us today. And, I've obviously gotten to know you over the years, but also, you're very popular online. Anybody who looks you up can find out a lot of information about you. And, Tony, for everybody listening, Tony was, over 300 games professionally. And believe it or not, if anybody thinks Tony was a defender, he actually scored 97 goals, I think, is what the statistics I read over his career. So if he is a defender, that's probably one of the highest goal margins or goal ratios out of any defender. But, he started back in Minnesota and then, played at DC United and in Germany, went over to Hertha and FC Nuremberg. And then in Chicago where I met him, and then, with the Columbus Crew and several other teams. So, Tony, I want to kick us off. You're obviously an ambassador, like I said, of the sport. You've got a gala that you run. You have your foundation, Mission to Unite Diverse Communities. Can you give us just a brief overview of your playing career and then include information about your foundation also?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Minnesota. I went to Wisconsin, Milwaukee on a soccer scholarship, and then I played indoor soccer back then, towards the end of my college career, and then it was called the USISL, and I played team for Milwaukee Rampage. And then I moved to Minnesota when we played on a team, and we lost in the championship. And then the next year the MLS started, and I went to DC United and played 3 years there, and we won the first two championships. And the third year we won the equivalent of the Champions League, but we lost in the MLS Cup final. But I played my contract out, and then I went to Germany, and I played in the Bundesliga for a team called Hertha Berlin, and we played in the Champions League or the UEFA Cup 3 years. Then I transferred to Nuremberg, and they were a team just coming up, so they're a struggling team, and but still in the Bundesliga. And during that time, I played in the 2002 World Cup, where we beat Mexico in the round of 16, and then we lost to Germany in the round of 8 in a tough game. And then I came back to America and played for Chicago Fire. And I had a brief stint in Columbus and a couple weeks in Colorado, and then I retired. And I unretired and played one last year for the LA Galaxy. And then I decided I wanted to move back to Minnesota where it all started and to be able to give back and get involved with soccer, but really do it more through developing relationships and at the grassroots level.
Awesome. Yeah. So, obviously you participated in Gold Cup as well, and won a Gold Cup, I believe, in 2005, and played World Cup, of course, with Jeve Goose, and I believe Thomas Dooley. I'm not sure who else was on that team. Probably who would have been in goal for you back then?
In which year?
That would have been 2002.
2002. Our starting keeper in the World Cup was Brad Friedel.
Okay.
It's Casey Keller, and actually Tony Miola was also on the team. Right.
Yeah, that's around when I graduated high school. So I remember that team pretty well. You guys, it's a man. Were you playing in the MLS when they used to do the dribble up penalty kick?
The first year. I was in. I played in the MLS in the very first year.
Nice. If you could wave a magic wand, would you bring that back?
No.
Well, tell us a little bit about your foundation.
We basically really try to build relationships. So we put mentors in schools and try to help them become teachers. In the summertime, when we're not working in schools, we do free soccer camps for 7,000 kids, and they're all a week long. And then we run a community center on the east side of St. Paul. And so it's a lot of hard work, but it pays off, and it's really about developmental relationships. And I truly believe relationships is what makes it tick, whether you're a teammate, a soccer player, or a coach. So really focusing on that and seeing how we're doing in the community and just today, Senator Amy Klobuchar stopped by, and she was a presidential candidate and dropped off some food. And, we delivered food for 400 families today and over, 1,400 people. And so right now with what's going on, we're just trying to help in whatever way is possible.
Yeah, you've always been really committed to that, man. And I know from speaking for all the people at NextGen, we think it's fantastic that you're able to do that. So, Next Generation Soccer Academy is an academy that is programmed and driven to a mission to help drive elite players and elite characters. So for our kids listening that are kids, one of the questions I have for you is, how did it feel? Do you remember how it felt during the first 10 minutes of a big match?
Your
first big match, first 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I think, normally in my career, I don't really get nervous because, game day is like perform day. But, there are some very firsts in there. And, like my first national team match, when I came off the bench. And when I start a game from scratch, it's usually, fine. But games that I've come off the bench, are a little more difficult because your heart rate goes up so quickly and you don't really have a chance to ease in on it. And then you find yourself trying to catch your breath with anxiety and stuff like that. So, I remember my first national team game, in China where, I was just breathing so heavy and, it was all a flash in the pan, but I was just trying to catch my breath because I was, I wanted to try harder and harder and harder, and I didn't get to ease into it.
It's a question I asked Sean Toch, who is with Louisville City, and he's won 3 USL championships. And I said to him, what was the first 10 minutes like of your first game? And we talked about it. And what I remember is that, like you just described, I remember making some runs and I couldn't breathe. And it was like 4 or 5 minutes into the game and I could not breathe. I was like, all right, this has nothing to do with the cardiovascular system. It was exactly like you just described. So, another question I have for you, Tony, is, we're talking about kids, of course. What are some suggestions that you have for young athletes when it comes to dealing with the challenge or being in a funk?
I think, try to, go around and I try to play pickup games and do stuff fun where you can get some little wins, try to go help somebody, you play with your little brother, in situations where hopefully, you're able to try stuff and get your confidence back. Ask people questions about things that you're doing, one thing you can always ask coach, what's one thing you think I could do to get better? Because, sometimes it's literally you're looking the wrong direction when you trap the ball. And there's some little things that you can do that make big improvements, right? And then sometimes it's just getting your mojo back, which is really, getting out of that funk, which is, about confidence. So if you can play with younger players and teach and have fun or play pickup, that's a great place to get your confidence back. And then when you come to your team, hopefully you feel good about it and you don't get nervous. And I always tell people, imagine playing soccer with a 6-year-old, right? And all you do is stand between them and the ball. Are you ever nervous at any point, right? You're not.
Right.
So you need to have the same mentality if you're playing with a 12-year-old, an 18-year-old, or 40-year-old. As long as you stand between them and the ball, they can never get it. But mentally, when people start pounding the ground or people get close to us, we get nervous. So one idea is start training with younger players sometimes and literally just stand between them and the ball. And then you start to move up in age groups, and that'll calm you down so that you realize that no matter what happens, no matter how much trouble you get in, if you stay between them and the ball, you have ball security.
That's really good advice. I like that. Like, get out of your, whatever, if you were in a funk as a player, get out of your everyday sort of routine and do something different. And then as you described, change up the routine also. I think that could be really useful for kids, because certainly it happens. I mean, whether you're 8 years old or 18 years old or 25, right?
Yep.
So, all right, another question for you, buddy. Who was, or who do you think is one of the best leaders you had in the game, either a captain or a coach? So either somebody you played with or somebody that led you.
I think Chris Armas. Chris, great leader. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I got you, buddy.
I think somebody was giving me a Facebook call. So, Chris Armas, he was a great leader, and he got everyone involved, and led by example as well.
Yeah, and where did you play with him? Was he in the national team with you, or
on the national team and with the Chicago Fire?
And where's he at today, Chris?
He's the head coach of the Red Bulls.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I certainly have familiar with the name. So, and what were some of the characteristics? I know you just briefly described them, but what was something that really stood out to you? Do you have a memory of when he
was honest? He was hardworking. He thought about the other people around him. He really respected everybody and treated everybody like an equal. And he walked the walk. And he was good.
Yeah, he was a good player for sure. I think was he a defensive midfielder?
Yeah, he was a defensive midfielder.
Yeah, I remember him. Kind of stockier, relatively 5'9", something like that.
Yeah, he might have even been shorter, but he was a small guy, played simple. Played in the LA Galaxy when MLS started, actually scored a goal against us in the final. Moved to Chicago, actually the team that beat us in year 3 in the championship game.
Well, I'm sure Chris would, if he ever hears this, will like that we overshot his height, right? So kind of like back in college, right? Everybody was over 6 feet. So, all right, another question I have for you, buddy. If you could go back to being 13 or 14 again, knowing what you know now, how would you prepare for tryouts?
I'd be in shape. I would make sure that I got a good meal like the day before and the week of, so I have a lot of energy. I would, try to make sure that I would give my all at all times. I would, really focus on my first touch and not being too much. A lot of times, especially as a professional soccer player, when you go into a team, there's only a couple Messis. So, you don't need to be the best guy on the team to make it. And coaches really aren't looking for a guy that's going to win the game for them. They need to know that they can put you out there, trust you. You're not going to lose, and you're going to help them win. So that's what you need to convince the coaches, that you are good enough to play at the level of this team. Once you're on the team, you get to decide who is the superstar, who's going to be the goal scorer, who's going to be the number 10. But if you try to be the goal scorer, the superstar in the tryout, and you have an off day, there's not going to be a spot for you on the team.
Yeah, those are great bullet points for sure. I can't disagree with any of those. I think, like you said, I think trust is a really big factor for putting somebody on the field. And it also not only impacts the coach's decisions, but the players around you, right? Being able to trust the guy next to you or the girl next to you, or in front of you or behind you, to be able to do their job. When I talked yesterday to Christina Uncle, with, she's a FIFA referee, and we talked a little bit, and she was alluding to some of those factors, just how important it is to not only give it your all, but, first touch was a big one for her too, and nutrition. Can't tell enough about nutrition. So when was the last time you were able to get out and kick a ball? You guys have a reunion with the O2 national team? That would be pretty cool.
We haven't in a while, I don't play. I hurt my knee a little bit, so I don't play as much. Up until 3 or 4 years ago, I was playing still 3-4 days a week, but now I've kind of stopped and I play a little tennis.
Yeah, well, that's good, man. Well, we would love to have you back somewhere down the road. Hopefully, you get to watch the evolution of us, and we'll continue to promote Tony Sanneh and the foundation. And I think, again, speaking for everybody at Next Generation Soccer Academy, I think it's great all that you do for the community. So thanks, Tony, so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, and keep doing the great work. And, I'm glad that you're, starting up and getting everybody, in a club focused on winning and people and developing, and you put a great crew together. So good luck. And look forward to joining you again.
Thanks a lot, Tony. Have a good one, and take care, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon.